today, and we're going to review our agenda for Thursday. 5 o'clock start time with a roll call by Ms. Adams, invocation by Pastor Greg Rolls, Pledge of Allegiance, Councilman Messmer, and we go to awards and presentations. Got the proclamation for Minority Enterprise Development Week and the Economic Development Commission Award, which will Mr. Boone handle. Thank you, sir. And then we go city manager's report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although this won't be for Thursday, you all know that the 9/11 ceremony will be at Fire 3, 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. There will be a CCOM meeting Thursday morning, so I'll be able to report to you on what we're discussing there. One of the issues right now is retransitioning the HR function back to the county and going through what we need to do that effectively. I'm awaiting this month's sales tax report. Hopefully I'll have that by Thursday. As you know, our revenues have been relatively flat for the whole year. Greenbrier Road and Four Winds Circle, Greenbrier is finished, and Four Winds should be back on track since the monsoon appears to be over, so that should be finished pretty soon. And then the State Route 90 sewer reroute that was awarded to K&G for about $490,000. That work is in progress. So, and probably have a little bit more for Thursday then. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, comments to city manager? Thank you. We'll move on to new business. We have item number 3, ordinance 2024-007 of the marijuana facilities operational requirements. Staff report, Mr. Pergola. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. As you recall, Trulieve of Sierra Vista is proposing a code amendment to extend the hours of operation for marijuana establishments from the current 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. to the proposed 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. In analyzing the request, staff first compared the proposed hours of operation with other communities. A comparison chart, which you saw at the last meeting, was provided in the memo that indicated that 10 out of the 17 communities that were reviewed either have the same hours of operation or expanded hours as the proposed amendment. In addition, when reviewing the Arizona Administrative Code, one of the conditions of the marijuana establishments is that they shall operate at least 30 hours a week between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., which does allow the flexibility of local jurisdictions to extend the hours of operation to these times. Staff also reviewed the criminal activity related to marijuana establishments. Since 2022, which was the year Trulieve opened, there have not been any significant amount of criminal activity associated with the business. And as stated previously, the chief of police stated that he had no concerns about the expanded hours of operation based on the data available. So with any code amendment, the burden of proof is on the proponent. The applicant's application for text amendment does provide their reasoning and justification of the requested text amendment, which it is part of your packet for your review. In reviewing the proponent's application and justification, as well as staff's own analysis, staff does recommend approval of the expanded hours of operation. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the text amendments at their July 23rd meeting. The item was placed within a 30-day public comment period on August 8th. Staff has received 6 written comments from the public, 4 in support and 2 in opposition, and those comments have also been included in your packets. And this does conclude staff's report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, comments from you guys? Yes, ma'am.
I have some comments. I really appreciate the public comments that came in. It's very, very helpful whenever members of the public let us know their thoughts and their concerns and their feelings about that. So I greatly appreciate that, and I hope that in the future that more members of the public will write in comments for however they feel about various things. There were, besides some of the positive comments and support, there were a couple of the negative comments talking about cartel supplying the product and things like that. And last meeting, I did go and to the facility, and I had a tour with the owner there and the manager there, and they gave me a real thorough explanation of how things work there, and the products that are out on display. They're empty boxes, so nobody can steal anything like that. The security measures are very strict. They follow protocol and things like that. And then the product, all of the product that they have there it's grown and processed in Arizona. So everything's been looked over and checked and went through all the processes. So none of the product is coming from any cartels or outside of our area. So I just wanted to kind of mention that if people are not really sure. I mean, the things that are on the streets that people are getting, maybe we're not really sure where that comes from. But from the facility here, they follow all the protocols and everything. So everything that people get there is safe. And then one of the other comments was talking about impaired drivers and intake and crime and things like that. And so I had a couple questions for Chief Heiser about the trend of the availability and the access to marijuana and the ability to kind of detect it and how things have kind of changed since it's been legalized.
Sure. Well, Mayor McCaw, Councilmember Landry, when the law passed legalizing recreational use of marijuana, we anticipated an increase in impaired drivers on the roadway. I mean, I think it's reasonable to expect that this is going to happen. And so to get ahead of that at Sierra Vista PD, we started working on our DRE program, and that's a drug recognition expert certification. Takes quite a bit of work, and you become an expert at recognizing very specific signs of impairment from drug influence. And so we augmented that program. We have a few officers now that are DRE certified. So bringing that into the field the same time that marijuana was legalized, we have kind of two things working together here. We had an anticipation that there would be more impaired drivers. There's right now a really good campaign. The Governor's Office for Highway Safety made a commercial using local law enforcement up in the valley that talks about a lot of people think that if it's legal to consume marijuana, therefore I can't be arrested for DUI. That's not true. You cannot be under the influence of marijuana while you're operating a motor vehicle. So there's a campaign afoot, really good commercial right now, talking about if you're feeling the impacts of marijuana, you're impaired, and you still could be impaired to the slightest degree, charged with DUI. So there's a public education piece to this, but our enforcement efforts have also increased since this by getting more officers DRE certified so they could recognize the signs and symptoms of impairment from marijuana. So as we spoke in another work session, there's an uptick in DUI arrests related to marijuana since it became legal. Part of that is because it became legal and more people are using it. Part of it is also because we have improved our ability to detect and apprehend people driving under the impairment of marijuana. Well, what percentage of which has caused that uptick, I can't speak to. I can't speak to if it has there been this number of impaired drivers that we've missed in the past because we didn't have that DRE program really grown yet. So that part I can't speak to. We are going to stay ahead of this both through public education and continuing to get more of our officers DRE certified.
And thank you. And I had one other question. So there's a little bit more business going on, and if they extend their hours, there'll probably be a more higher intake of customers there. Has there been like a higher call volume in that area, or for that store that you guys have experienced?
No, Mayor McCaw, Councilmember Landry, one of the things we looked at when community development was having us pull some data was looking at crime trends and an increase in calls for service, whether it be property crimes, disorderly conducts. Nothing we have seen would indicate related to, that we could tie to that particular business. And one thing we look at is the neighboring businesses. They have an opportunity to call and complain and make complaints, and that's something we looked for and didn't see anything for.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you. I was going to address those same comments, the negative comments. Thank you for clarifying that. You clarified it very well, so I'm not even going to touch them. Just want to remind people, we have the Arizona liquor law. You can sell liquor from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. We have places that are open at 6 a.m. that sell alcohol, and there's not a problem there. And they close at 10 p.m. Most of them, like Fry's, Cactus Spirits, Beverage Warehouse, SV Food Mart, Circle K is open 24 hours. So extending an hours for a business is all we're doing. We're not asking anybody to go against their beliefs and what they feel. It is a law. It's made by law by the voters. 60% was the vote in 2020. So I'm looking at this as just extending hours on a business. So that's why I'm supporting it. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Just, I think that all caught our eye, the cartel comment in the
Yeah,
email.
it did.
But when we spoke to the sheriff, he was mentioning that when they do catch someone bringing drugs over, it's usually fentanyl. It's like 99% fentanyl now. It's not marijuana. So I just wanted to put that out there to address that. But I think they already did a good
Yeah.
job. Yeah, thank you.
Any more comments? All right. So we'll proceed on to our next item is Resolution 2024-063. It's the 3.5 million. And Mr. Selena, is he on the line? So he'll be here. He'll be here on Thursday. Manager, you want to tackle this?
Well, again, it's along the lines of what you've been doing with the IDA
Yeah.
for a number of months now. So just another,
Just
bond
another-
issue. So if he's not here Thursday, I'll be able to
Roger that.
give you the particulars.
All right, thank you, ma'am. And we go to item number 5, Resolution 2024-064, authorizing the city attorney to take action against Chuck Long. Mr. Felix, staff report. Afternoon, sir.
Mayor, members of the council. Mr. Long contracted with the city for a dumpster at the old Burger King as part of the cleanup for it. He had multiple service calls and racked up about a $3,600 bill. He has paid $300 of that, and has not responded to any letters, emails, phone calls, certified letters, or anything else like that. Obviously, with over $3,000, that's not, may sound insignificant, but we treat everybody fairly. This person is not paid, so we've exhausted every means that we can go through them. As they are not an individual, we cannot use the state set-off or lien property or anything like that, like we can do against residential customers. The next step in the process would be to take at least legal action, starting with a certified legal letter. But in order to do that and have the city attorney do that, council must approve his ability and ask him to do that for us. That's what this resolution does, is request the city attorney start collection proceedings and legal proceedings against Mr. Long to try and get us paid for what they did. Be happy to answer any
Yes, sir.
questions.
Does he still have possession of the dumpster?
No, he turned the dumpster back in about May.
Okay. That's all I had.
Of course, they're out for business now, and we can't hold the property owner liable for it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just real quick. I shot Mr. Long a text, and he texted me back, and he called me. So I talked to the guy. He's a businessman. I looked at his business. I was surprised because he's got pretty good reviews, on Facebook and on Google. So I was surprised that someone like that would not be responsible or responsive. So I was kind of wondering what was going on. Like, it seemed awkward. But the guy called me, so we talked. It's just one of those deals where I understand the situation is it's a construction pyramid, if you will. The workers get paid first, and then all the bills get paid on the end. And it's not. I'm not saying why he shouldn't pay already, but I talked to the guy and he's willing to pay, obviously. But he knows. I'm sure what's coming next. But talking to the guy, he seemed like he just was waiting for the Burger King portion. He didn't know that was open yet. He's not part of that whole deal. He was just the demo crew and getting rid of that. So he's waiting for his money in order to pay the bill. So that's what I understood from him. Just it was interesting to talk to him and hear his perspective. Just like anything else we look into before we vote, I want to do my due diligence as much as possible. So it's interesting talking to him, hearing his side. But he also stated that he had sent a letter, email or something like that to our building department. Whether that's happened or not, I don't know. But just wanted to put that information out there.
Yes.
So he's ultimately a subcontract to Burger King or whoever did the renovations, correct?
These not indicated that he's a subcontractor under a general contract, or the property owner could do him separately than the contractor.
Okay.
I do not know how his arrangement with the owner was.
Okay.
That is not part of our question, so.
See if he was bonded.
Oh. Okay. Thank you, sir. We move to our next item number 6, 2024-065, the acceptance of the Total Odom Nation Grant. Staff report, this would be Chief Jones? Yes.
Mayor McCaw, members of council, I'm happy to announce that the fire department received a grant from the Tohono O'odham Nation for $36,000 for 2 sets of airbags. Just for education, airbags are used in the fire department for really 3 major things: for vehicle stabilization and vehicle accidents, for building collapses to help with walls, and also what we call heavy rescue. If somebody is pinned in a vehicle, they help raise the vehicle off the person. The bags come in 6 different sizes, which have different weight requirements for lifting up. And currently, we have airbags at Station 3 and Station 2. And we depend on Fort Huachuca to handle the west side for those kinds of accidents we have there. So we're looking forward to receiving them and buying them. And I'd really like to give special thanks to Battalion Chief Matt Ormeyer for writing the grant and receiving it. And with that, I'll ask for any questions.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Just comment, I was gonna ask you the same question, Chief, who wrote the grant, like, to thank them for taking their time. A lot of places, departments, cities won't do that, so thank you to Chief Armagh for writing the grant, and to the Tohono O'odham Nation for offering these grants to our city.
This will be 1 airbag or 2?
It'll be, Mayor McCall, it'll be 2 sets of airbags, 2 different sets. One set is $18,000, so we'll get 2 sets. So we'll replace the sets that we have currently at Station 2 and Station 3.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. And that's our council meeting for Thursday. On tonight, we have a couple presentations. First presentation is community medical services. Ms. Desiree, how do you say your last name?
It's tricky. Voshevsky. Voshevsky.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like it's spelled.
Yeah, just like
Pretty
it's
much. So, yeah.
I was having to call it the first name.
So thank you, Mayor and City Council, for allowing us to come present to you all. I'm going to have Teddy, we have limited number of folders that may make it around, but you also have some flyers of the services that we offer. But I heard you guys mention a little bit before the fentanyl coming across the borders and opioid crisis and all that kind of stuff that we're going through right now. And that's kind of where we come in. We are an opioid treatment program, so we specifically treat people that are utilizing opioids. If they're utilizing other substances like alcohol or just stimulants, unfortunately, we don't have the licensing for that, so our main focus is going to be with opioid use disorder. So community medical services, again, we're an outpatient opioid treatment program. We've actually been in Arizona since 1983. We started up in Scottsdale, and we have about 13 clinics in the Phoenix area. We have multiple clinics in rural areas throughout the state of Arizona, plus clinics in other states, Colorado, Alaska, North Dakota, Minnesota. Oregon is our newest clinics that we're opening, and things like that. So we're quite a bit of a large organization that we've been around for quite a while, specifically working with opioid use disorder. So one of the things that we talk about and we have to combat within the community and within the recovery community as well is stigma. And when we look at stigma, we're combating people that say that the medications people aren't truly in recovery when they're utilizing the medications. We also can, combat stigma in the community with just substance use disorder altogether. It goes from labeling to stereotypes, creates that division of us versus them, a loss in social status, and ultimately discrimination. I know a lot of you probably have social media, right? Has anybody seen a post on social media of somebody that's nodding out at a Circle K or anything like that in public? And you see some people are responding, that's somebody's mother, that's somebody's brother, that's somebody's father. But as soon as you see somebody post on there, oh, that's just an addict or that's just a junkie, the negative comments that come out after that kind of cascade. So that's one of the things that we're trying to combat within the community is that stigma. People that use drugs, lives do matter. It takes a while for somebody to get back on track. It is a disease, and a lot of people think that it's a choice, but it's not. Working with people every day, we can see that In a ways, it's somewhat like cancer. Cancer can be deadly if it goes untreated, right? If we hope to get somebody into remission, we need to start somewhere in working with them. And that's how I kind of view the whole substance use disorder as a disease. It's kind of like a cancer that we're trying to get people in remission so we can help them get their lives back on track. So there's many paths of recovery. We work with a lot of different paths of recovery. Abstinence is a big pathway to recovery. 12-step recovery, Celebrate Recovery's out there. Treatment modules are out there. Some people recover just by tagging into their family, building that connection with the community, going to church. There's not one pathway that's going to work for everybody else. So this is just an option of a pathway that we find works with people with opioid use disorder, especially when utilizing fentanyl. Some of the goals from the medication are to reduce any significant withdrawals, reduction in cravings, stabilize brain chemistry, eliminate any other opioid use, block the euphoric effects of other opiates, improve function, maintain and establish healthy relationships, and establish housing and maintain employment. So what we try to do with the medication when we see the cycle of opioid use, it goes from opioid use to physical dependence to withdrawal to desperation, and that's the antisocial behavior when people start getting involved within the criminal justice system. So what we try to do is to cut off the dependence between the physical dependence and the withdrawal. So hopefully we can stop that rest of the things from domino affecting into play. So this is how the medications work in the brain. We utilize 3 of the FDA-approved medications: methadone, buprenorphine, and naloxone. And we're going to go a little bit more detail onto that. So methadone is pretty much the gold standard of treatment for opioid use disorder. And the reason it's the gold standard of treatment for opioid use disorder because it's the longest lasting, and it allows us to start the person immediately. So our clinic is all walk-in. As soon as somebody's ready to engage in services, they can walk in the clinic. They'll see a counselor, they'll see a provider, and usually get started on the medication the same day. Okay, so that's how we try to catch somebody in an instance. Because if you try to catch somebody later on or tell them they need to come back a week long for an appointment, chances are that person is not going to come back in, or it's going to take them another couple months before they make another appointment for another week later, and then go back into that fun cycle. So again, there's no waiting time to start the medication. It alleviates withdrawal symptoms. It prevents cravings. It does block the euphoric effects of other opiates. So I've heard people that are using while trying to get stable on the medication, the euphoric effects that they're feeling with fentanyl when they use on top of that aren't as, it doesn't give them that rush that it used to. So it kind of blocks and dulls that down. So they're not feeling that same high. We do offer a taper process, so when somebody's stable and they're ready to discontinue the medication, we do discontinue the medication through a taper process, about 5 to 10% of their dose every 1 to 2 weeks. So it can take quite a while for somebody to taper off the medication, but it's safer than them not coming in at all. So this is what we try to do with the medication. The illicit opioid use, you see the high lows and the withdrawals from it. So they kind of go up and down, up and down. If somebody's on a stable dose of methadone, it should keep them in that comfort zone where they're not experiencing that ping pong. So they're not experiencing those highs, but they're not going into the withdrawals. So sometimes it can take a dose adjustment of 1 milligram to find that magic number for the person, and everybody's different. The other one we utilize is buprenorphine. Buprenorphine is a partial opiate agonist, so it activates part of the receptors. It also contains naloxone in it that sits on top of the opioid receptor, so if anybody tries to use after that, they either don't feel anything or they could actually get sick, put themselves into precipitated withdrawals if it's taken with any other type of opioid. The maximum dose on here is 24 milligrams, and again, a slow taper with the provider supervision. And this one is also, somebody does have to be into mild to moderate withdrawal. So if they've used that same morning, we can't start them on Suboxone that same day. We have to wait about 17 to 24 hours before we can start them on Suboxone. The other forms of buprenorphine are Subutex, Sublocade, and Brixadi. Subutex we commonly use for pregnant patients. It doesn't have the naloxone in it, so it's a little bit better safety profile for pregnant clients. Sublocade injection is new. We've seen a lot of success with this medication. It is a buprenorphine injection that they get once every 28 days. So they don't have to come into the clinic. There's no risk of medication being out in the community. They come in every 28 days and they receive their injection and they're good for that time period. There's little to no withdrawals with this medication as well because it kind of time releases out of their body during those 28 days. Brixadi is another form of injectable buprenorphine. It's a little bit newer than Sublocade. They can do a weekly or monthly injection with this one. And again, it's going to time release out of their system as they're taking the injection. The last one we use is naltrexone or Vivitrol. This one is an opiate blocker. It blocks 100% of the opioid receptors. This is a great medication as long as a person is in the maintenance phase of their recovery, meaning they're not new to treatment. They have a handle on their recovery. They just may be experiencing cravings or wanting to use. If they come in and get the Vivitrol injection, it's meant to eliminate those cravings. Okay, they have to be off of any type of opiates for 7 to 14 days prior to the injection. So if you look at how fentanyl is out in the community, it's very, very difficult to get somebody to those 7 to 14 days of non-use to do a Vivitrol injection. Okay. It is possible to also overdose while utilizing Vivitrol. That's not a commonly known fact. So even though it does block the opioid receptors, if you continue to use on top of it, you can actually use enough that you're going to push the Vivitrol off the opioid receptor, and you have all that free-forming fentanyl or opioids in their system. It can actually all rush into that receptor all at once, and a person can overdose. So if they're not in that place where they're in that maintenance phase of their recovery, that's something that they can actually do while they're prescribed Vivitrol. So best practices for treatment, medically we're recommended to be on the medication for a year, regardless of what medication it is. Best outcome studies are showing 2 years. We let the patient decide when it's best for them to discuss the possible taper. Everybody's in their different place. Everybody's getting services. They may be getting services somewhere else too. They may just be getting services with us. They may be going through some life changes, so we don't encourage them to get off the medication. But if they do come to us and say, I'm ready, we're going to follow that taper protocol and get them off the medication. It should be used in conjunction with supportive services like counseling, peer support, case management groups, or peer-run support groups. Teddy right here is our peer support over at the Sierra Vista Clinic. So he works with the clients individually as well to help them stay on track. So we know the medication by itself is not a magic fix-all. We need those other supported services to get their head right in order to maintain their recovery. If one modality isn't working, we can go between them. So if they decide methadone's not working for them, we'll make a plan to get them switched over to buprenorphine. And the same thing with buprenorphine. If they're not liking it or how it's making them feel, we can get them switched over to methadone. And again, one modality isn't better than the other. The services we provide in clinic are medication management, counseling, case management, peer support, groups, naloxone distribution, Hep C testing and treatment, drug screens, and we also added STI testing. We added that to our list that we're able to do now. STI testing, diversion control, so we make sure the medication is safe out in the community. So if somebody has take-homes of methadone or Suboxone weekly, bi-monthly, or monthly, at any time our nurses can call them. They have to come into the clinic with all of their medication, and they make sure that the bottles were taken in order by day, because each day is labeled for methadone. They have to provide a UA, urine drug screen, and they have to take that dose in front of the counselor or in front of the nurse's station, so we can make sure that they have the right number of bottles. They're taking it as prescribed, even as far as the dates. And if some of those criteria aren't met, it can actually drop them down back into daily status, where they have to come back into the clinic every day to receive the medication, or one level. So we have our safety protocols around that. We do medical and psychiatrical referrals, OBGYN collaborations. We deliver to residential treatment facilities. We run a prescription check to make sure that when they come see the provider will run their name through their system. And if they're prescribed things like benzos, like Xanax or things like that, benzodiazepines, we have to account for that, because that's a high risk for an overdose, because both of them depress the respiratory system. So things, we know which medications kind of depress the respiratory system more often, things like Xanax, Klonopin, even Gabapen. Now we have to be careful of. That's been widely prescribed for a lot of different mental health things, and it actually, with methadone, it can depress the respiratory system and cause an overdose. So we have to kind of be careful which medications interact with other medications. We have community and criminal justice programs. Right now, we're working with Arizona Department of Corrections. There's about 7,000 people incarcerated in Arizona Department of Corrections that are either utilizing prescribed methadone or Suboxone that are in custody, and they're keeping them on the medication. We have a little bit over 700 people that we're coordinating care from that are releasing within the next 90 days at one of our clinics statewide. So we work a lot with pregnant women too. So anybody that comes in that has opioid use disorder that's pregnant, we hopefully tie them in with Hushabye nurseries. There's different stages during pregnancy where it actually can be dangerous to the mom and the baby to detox. So we don't want to put the baby through that stress because they can actually miscarry and lose the baby. So we work with them to get back on track, make sure they're keeping an eye on their urine drug screens, their counseling, all that kind of stuff, and make sure that they have the support they need, because when they give birth at the hospital, chances are DCFS is going to be involved, so we prepare them for all that and make sure they have everything that they need to keep the family unified. So correctional health programs, we do outreach to the houseless population. We have deflection programs in Tucson and Phoenix area. We do jail dosing and delivery in a lot of the outstanding counties. We work with the Cochise County Jail for methadone deliveries. Coordinating care for jail and reentry, integration into specialty courts programs. So we work with drug courts, DTAPs, STEPS court, family drug court, veterans court. So anything we can provide support to people that may be involved in the criminal justice system as well. So again, like I said before, no intakes for the waiting process. Medication is started the same day. Methadone is low and requires daily dosing. So somebody's coming in, receiving their medication that same day, and at first they're coming in every single day. So if somebody's that dedicated to treatment, especially early on, that's a huge commitment. I don't know about you, but there's not really a place that I'm not getting paid for that I'm going to show up every single day, right? So it does take some type of commitment for them, whether they know where they want to go with that when they walk through those doors or not. We're going to be there to support them. Counseling sessions are required 1 time per month. UAs are scheduled 2 times per month. And again, best outcomes are when the medication is used 1 to 2 years. We're also a community provider for Narcan and Naloxone, so we do Narcan training with the community to any entities that are in need of Narcan training, and we can also provide that to the community as well. So even people that aren't clients that walk in and say, I need Narcan or Naloxone, we'll make sure we get that to them. Any questions?
Any questions?
Some comments.
Yes, yes.
Go ahead. I appreciate that it was very, very informative. I like all the information you put out. Just so people know, what happens if, you have the 3 options here?
Mm-hmm.
What have you experienced when someone tries cold turkey? What does that do to the body?
Withdrawing cold turkey can be extremely painful, especially with fentanyl. It's getting harder and harder to get somebody into detox and to stay. You're talking about cold sweats, you're talking about vomiting, diarrhea, all that kind of stuff. If you think about the worst flu that you ever had and magnify that by 10, that's probably what you're looking at when it comes to opioid use withdrawal. And it also ends up bottoming out somebody's tolerance. So when that happens, that leaves a person highly susceptible to a fatal overdose if they were to go return to use. Just being on the medication itself, whether it's methadone or Suboxone or Vivitrol, it reduces the risk of a fatal overdose by up to 75%. So, if we're just doing it for harm reduction purposes to try to keep somebody alive at first, that's the best, we can do until they can start getting that little bit of hope. Because we can start getting them those little successes, no matter how small they are, we can start building on it. It's like, okay, you need to come into the clinic every day. They hit that everyday mark. Or maybe at first it's come in the first 3 days. They hit those first 3 days. Okay, let's go for another 3 days. And we start building on that and using that as tools to show that they can succeed and can achieve the goals that they have.
Okay. And on a blood test, how different does this look other than if you're an opioid user versus recovering opioids using some of these drugs?
So they filter out in urine drug screens. I know for our urine drug screens, when we do them in the clinic, we're testing for methadone metabolite. That tells us if somebody's diverting their medication, because if they come in they're on monthly and they have only methadone in their system, that means they may not be taking it as prescribed and they get knocked down to daily. So we test for the metabolite to make sure that their body's processing and metabolizing the medication. So it's methadone, metabolite, opiates, heroin, fentanyl. Then we test for amphetamines and methamphetamines, barbiturates, buprenorphine, and alcohol.
Thank you. I appreciate you offering all those services. And there's normally your clinics are normally like a NIMBY situation. Nobody wants it in their area. But the fact that you provide all these services, including Veterans Court, is very good information and good to know. I appreciate that. As you mentioned, social media. If it's a celebrity, everybody feels bad for them. Oh my God, I hope they recover. But when it's like somebody's uncle, they're like, oh, that guy's just a junkie.
Yeah.
Same deal. It affects anybody. So there is no difference there really, other than somebody's a millionaire and somebody's not. So appreciate all the information. Thank you.
You don't matter.
What is your overall success rate?
That was what I was gonna ask.
So we track social determinants of health, and because methadone and Suboxone and this type of treatment, it could take a while for somebody to get back on track. Personally, when I was at Peer Support at one of our Tucson clinics, it took 2 years for a client to come in and finally say that they wanted to go to treatment. And that was 2 years of him coming in, talking to me asking him every now and then, are you ready? Him saying, not sure yet. And, it was kind of coming back and forth. But after those 2 years, he finally went to treatment. He got the help that he needed. He was in recovery for a little bit. Then his mom passed away, so that triggered him back out a little bit. But within 2 months, he came back and he's like, I need to go back to treatment. So he went back to treatment, and I think he's been free from other opiates for about 2 years now. So I've been with CMS for 4.5 years. So the first 2 years and then the last 2.5 years, he's been substance free from anything else. So it kind of depends on people, on where they're at in their recovery. And everybody's measure of success is different. Some people are okay with, just getting rid of the opiates. Other people are okay with wanting to get rid of everything. Some of them have those reservations, and that's what the counselors work with them on. They work with them on finding out what is their next motivator to hit the next goal in their recovery. We do track social determinants of health, and we do see a reduction in depression and anxiety after the first, I think it was 6 months, and then a year is what they were looking at. We see an increase in employment after the first 6 months, and then another jump after a year, as well as stable housing and things like that. So those are things, we're new to tracking social determinants of health, so I think the first full year was our last, was this past year. So in December is when we'll wrap up the data again within our systems to kind of put out more information on for the past 2 years. How well the social determinants of health are working out for our clients, but we do see a lot of positive impact. But it can be hit and miss because, like I said, recovery isn't linear, and somebody can be doing well for 3 years, and then something traumatic can happen where they didn't anticipate in their recovery. And I can say I'm in recovery too. I've been in recovery for 7 years myself. I can tell you right now, I can say, well, I'm not going to use if my mom dies, or I'm not going to use if this person dies. But when that action actually happens, I may not have everything set up the way I thought it was. So it's continually working with somebody, and I think it's more not giving up on the person and inspiring that hope that we see the success in.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
One, I agree with your stigma, and like Mark said, this drug don't care if you're rich, poor, what race you are, urban, rural background. It's get addicted because I got a sprained ankle, and now I'm looking for wherever I can. And that's why it spreads so much. So, one, thanks for everything you do. And now for us and for our community, what's your funding source? And then how can the community help you?
So our funding source, we take all forms of access. So every form of Medicaid we take. We also take some private insurances, some Medicare. We do have some SOR and SABG funding available, so we are able to get people on grants if they don't have a funding source. Pretty much, we try to avoid turning somebody away for treatment for their ability to pay, period. We will get them on a grant funding. We have Teddy's a community assister for access, so he can actually set somebody up for access in the clinic and get them set up for Medicaid and for food stamps while they're there. So we try everything that we can. Private pay fees, we do have a private pay fee scale. And I'm going to ask this question. How much do you think methadone is a week treatment?
Oh, I couldn't even imagine.
Yes.
A lot.
Anybody?
Not a lot? I'm going to say not
For a
that
week,
much.
for a
'cause
week.
Teddy's giving me cheating
They're
answers.
I say
generic.
500.
$70 a week, so $10 a day,
A person?
a person.
Oh, that ain't bad at all.
No, it's not. So even though that's pretty manageable and that's usually our last resort, and sometimes when I tell clients, I'm like, how much were you trying to hustle every day to get what you needed?
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure you can come up with $10 a day.
Yeah.
So, but that's, like I said, our last case scenario. We try to fund somebody and make sure they have the access to the treatment, because financial and paying for it is actually, we consider it a barrier to treatment. So whatever barriers that we can eliminate for somebody, that's what we're going to work with.
And then one final question, because you brought it up, and there's people maybe watching, or people watching have no idea what Access is.
Oh.
Can you explain what Access is, and if I'm down and out, how can I get access?
Access is a state Medicaid system, so it's Arizona Health Cost Containment.
Arizona Healthcare Cost.
There we go. I was missing a C. But the HEA Plus website, HEAplus.com, is where anybody can apply for access if they're unemployed, experiencing financial hardship, and they can apply for health insurance, or they can apply for food stamps or cash assistance based on the state recommendations.
Thank you. And they're not just unemployed, a certain level of income also.
Certain levels of income, yes.
For people watching, if people have questions. So again, I appreciate what y'all do. And
If you don't know, apply, and it'll tell you what to do from there. And even if it's the marketplace or somewhere else, a low-cost insurance, they'll be able to direct you where you need to go. Teddy has some folders to hand out to you guys.
He
He
gave
did.
them to us.
Oh, he did?
They're-
Thank you,
Okay,
Teddy.
good.
Thanks.
And if you guys have any questions?
I did have one more.
Yes.
Thank you for presenting and for all the work you guys are doing with peer support. The list of services that you put on the one slide, is that, are all those services offered at the Sierra Vista Clinic? Or, because your Tucson address is all over the slides, but I wasn't
Yeah.
sure.
I'm based out of Tucson, and I travel all over eastern Arizona doing the presentations and the outreach kind of stuff. But yes, most of the services are available. I think for Sierra Vista, should be starting groups soon to get that ball rolling again, because we had a lull in that. We had to focus on the outreach for a little while, and then we're going to go back and look at what groups we can have available in the clinic. Sometimes space is available because Sierra Vista Clinic is doing pretty well. But if we have to work with other organizations like Hope Incorporated or things like that, we work very closely with them in every area that they're in, is that we kind of co-locate in. So we actually can refer people to groups. That's the only one that doesn't transfer over to other areas, is that piece.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Thank you so much for the brief. You have a great, I met Teddy almost 2 years ago, and we talked about this and talked about it at NAMI, I think it was. So thank you so much. Thank you for the resources that you offer. Anything else? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Teddy.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll go to our next presentation, which is payment condition analysis results and recommendations. Ma'am, Aaron, good news?
Mixed news, but there is some good news in there. All right, so good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. So I am here today to present the results of the recent pavement condition analysis. I did want to take an opportunity to thank the members of the Sierra Vista Metropolitan Planning Organization, Karen Lamberton and Justin Hembry. Unfortunately, neither one of them could be here today due to family emergencies. But they did tell me they're going to watch this presentation when they get back. But did want to thank them for the funding support of this analysis. It has been tremendously valuable to us, and we appreciate our partnership with the Sierra Vista MPO. So this is the current City Council strategic objective. You've had something similar to this for several years now in the strategic plan, but currently what you're looking to do is prioritize reducing the number of road miles in the poor or very poor classifications, and also trying to keep roads that are in good shape there as much as possible. So just kind of a history of PCI surveys, and I'll explain what that is in a minute, and where we've come from and how we got here. So we've actually been doing this kind of work for many years before it was automated. The way we did it prior to about 2018 is we'd send employees out in their free time to go drive around and take a look at roads. They had a little form they filled out. And this was largely an unscientific process. It's based on one person's opinion. It's also based on what they can see. So potholes and cracking, those are easy to see. But if there's an issue with the subgrade and it's starting to get soft, they can't necessarily see that issue and know that that road's going to fail more quickly than other roads. The other thing about it is people have different opinions. It would ask for, how much of the road is exhibiting what we call alligator cracking. And one person could take a look at it, someone else could rate it much, much differently. So it was a good system for what we were doing at the time, but wasn't necessarily the best. The other thing we ran into was by the time they were able to finish the entire roadway network and start back over again, roads were failing faster than they could get back around to them. So it wasn't always an up-to-date analysis of the pavement system. So now, starting in 2018 and continuing into this year, what we've done is an automated analysis through radar. So a truck drives through town, it's pulling what looks like a little trailer behind it, and radar is taking a look at the road. So everything we used to do with an employee filling out forms is now automatically onto the computer, and it's in real time. They can also get to our entire roadway network in weeks, whereas it was taking us years. So it provides more meaningful data more quickly, and it also detects those unseen problems I talked about. It can see if there are issues with the subgrade and is able to tell us that so that we prioritize that road differently. As I noted, funding was through the Sierra Vista Metropolitan Planning Organization for both the 2018 and the update this year. So we thank them very much for their willingness to fund this program for us. And it's really delivered a lot of bang for the buck based on how we use it. And I will note that we were the first that I'm aware of in Cochise County to go to an automated pavement condition assessment, and other entities such as Cochise County are now using this because they see the value of it. You think of the size of Cochise County, it's the size of the state of Connecticut, and how rural some of these roads are, and to have the ability to just drive a truck with a trailer behind it and it's picking up all this data. So it is being used by other entities now in Cochise County to assess their pavements as well. Mentioned the pavement condition index. So what is this? It is a measure from 0 to 100, so exactly like the grades all of us were used to in school, 0 to 100 of the condition of a pavement. It's considering factors such as the smoothness, cracking, potholes, and other factors associated with the pavement. So it's very easy to understand the results you're getting back and how that translates into the pavement condition. Another term you're going to hear me talk about today is backlog. What is a backlog? So the backlog is any roads with a PCI less than 40. They are rated as poor or very poor condition. So that is considered the maintenance backlog, is those roads. And so here are the key findings from the current pavement condition analysis. So in 2019, the overall PCI of our roads was 64. It is now at a 58. I'm going to talk a little bit about the national averages there and why those may not be reflective of current national averages. And then you can see also the percent of excellence has dropped off a little bit. The percent of poor or very poor has also gone up a little bit. I did want to note that we have over 4 million square yards of pavement in our inventory. It's one of the largest assets owned by the city of Sierra Vista. So what does this 58 means? It means that our roadways overall are on the upper side of fair condition. Not as good as we would like, but they are overall rated in fair condition. It is near the 2019 national average. Why is this not necessarily reflective? I can tell you I looked for data on what the current national average is for pavement condition, and no one's reporting it currently. I could not find updated numbers on this. I think part of the reason for that is communities across the country are struggling with the same kind of issues, and you're going to hear me talk about some of those. But overall, aging infrastructure, lack of funding, and also inflationary pressures in the different repair methods out there. So I would say the national average, if we were to be able to find a number, it's probably dropped from that 60 to 65. Because again, everyone is struggling with the same issues. There's no magic pot of money out there to address the nation's aging infrastructure. So I would say fairly confidently that we are within the national average. We would certainly like to be higher up, but we are within the national average. The other thing that I think you see here that is maybe contributing is the lack of new development over the last couple years. Sierra Vista has grown, but it has grown more slowly. And why that matters is when you have new development, those roads are brand new. They're going to bring your totals up because they're going to be the roads above 90. In theory, they're going to be above 90 for several years. So when you don't have new development that's kind of, I would say almost artificially bumping that total up, you're going to see the aging infrastructure more clearly here. So as I noted, newer roads would easily classify as excellent, and they would for several years. So here's some information on the different classifications of roads and how they fall. As with a couple years ago, arterial roads have the highest PCI, and this is actually really great news. And these are arterial roads owned by the city of Sierra Vista. I want to put that out there because other arterials are not in as good a shape. They are not reflected here. These are just roads owned by the city of Sierra Vista. But in general, our arterials are in the best shape of our roadway network. So we have done a good job of keeping those roadways that people use most frequently, the big roadways, in good condition. That being said, a lot needs to happen to keep them in good condition because they have more traffic on them. Once they start exhibiting signs of stress, they are going to fail more rapidly than a local street that has lower traffic volumes. But the fact they're still ranked highly is great news. Collectors are ranked the lowest. So that's not necessarily a surprise. Collectors are your roadways. Few examples would be El Camino Real, Town and Country, Canyon de Flores. They funnel traffic out of neighborhoods. The reason why collectors are tough is they don't have the appeal of arterial streets for things like grant funding. But they aren't as visible to people as the roadway they live on, the local street. So they end up in this middle range. The other thing with them is they tend to be a little bit wider than local streets, so they're going to cost more to fix. So as we look at prioritizing our funding, we'll a lot of times default to local roadways because we can get more bang for our buck by addressing those local roadways. So collectors always end up being in this weird middle ground. And then you can see the local network average condition is 59. Actually pretty comparable to the arterials. So again, I would say this is good news on the local roadways. They saw the least drop over the last 5 years. It was only 3 points. So it tells me we have done a good job prioritizing those local roadway repairs and getting to those neighborhoods. And we know that although the arterials are important to people too, the roadway in front of their house is very important. It's the roadway they drive on the most every day, and it's the roadway they're gonna probably be the quickest to call and complain about as well. So I feel like we've done a really good job in keeping the locals at a good place. One other thing I wanted to say about the arterials as well, what you're seeing here, I talked about, new construction and how that factors into it. So a lot of our arterials, Fry Boulevard and 7th Street, we rebuilt those about 10 years ago. We were able to get grant funds to basically take those roadways down to the dirt and rebuild them. That work is now 10 years old. So it was a great project, but it's showing its age now. Buffalo Soldier Trail is at over 20 years now since it's gotten a complete rebuild, and you're aware that we've been able to get some congressional appropriations to assist with rebuilding that road. But it's just that, the efforts we made in the past are aging at this point in time, so we need to keep on top of it. Oh, and one final point. So our local roadways, they're about 65% of our roadway network. That's based on area. So our focus on the local roads is actually focusing on the majority of roadways in Sierra Vista. So some of the challenges of roadway maintenance, I've already mentioned aging infrastructure. This is something that's occurring in communities across the country. Here locally, a lot of our biggest subdivisions are now 40 years plus old, and that's difficult to even comprehend because a lot of us think 40 years ago and we're thinking, way far back. It's not actually that far back. So some of the subdivisions that would fall in that 40 plus are Village Meadows, Pueblo del Sol, Montebello, and Town and Country. Think about that area. That is the majority of the city of Sierra Vista right there. That's our largest subdivisions. They're all now more than 40 years old. Here's a mind-blowing one for me. Canyon de Flores is now 25 years old. The oldest parts of Canyon de Flores next to Highway 92 are now 25 years. And the newer portions are 20 years old now. And that's our newest large subdivision in town. It's at 25 years. Meanwhile, we're dealing with antiquated funding streams that have not kept pace. You've heard me talk about the gas tax. Last Arizona gas tax increase was 30 years ago, 1994. A lot has changed since 1994. And you're seeing a different mix of vehicles on the road. Compared to 30 years ago, there are now a lot more trucks and SUVs on the road. 30 years ago, there were more cars. People's preference now is for larger vehicles, and the significance of the larger vehicles is they are heavier in general, although vehicles overall have been getting lighter, so that helps, but they put more wear and tear on our pavement than lighter vehicles do. Here more recently, you're seeing the rise of alternative fuel vehicles. An electric car is about 750 pounds heavier than a conventional car, and it goes up into the thousands of pounds as you get into the trucks. So they are significantly heavier. When you look at the gas tax, they also do not contribute to the gas tax because they're not buying gas. So we have a funding system that is built around gasoline, and increasingly vehicles are not using gasoline. Also, something that's happened just in the last couple years since COVID, how are people doing their shopping these days? More and more online. So all the delivery vehicles rolling through neighborhoods, dropping off all those boxes, those are heavier vehicles as well, carrying more stuff inside of them. It's just changing demographics, and unfortunately, the gas tax hasn't kept up with that. You've also heard me talk about the gas tax pie, and Victoria and Chuck have talked about it as well. It's based on population statewide, how those funds are distributed. Sierra Vista has grown. It has grown at a modest rate. I think when I started here at the city of Sierra Vista was somewhere in the 12 to 16 range on that list of largest cities in Sierra Vista. We are currently sitting at number 27. Communities that didn't exist when I started working here have now not only exist, but they have passed us. Communities like Avondale, Buckeye, Maricopa, Queen Creek,
Yep.
all the generally Phoenix bedroom communities have now passed us. So not only do we have a shrinking pie, we have it being cut in more pieces. So it's not a recipe for success as far as funding transportation. Let's see. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the inflationary pressure as well. So when I started here, one of the things my boss has said is we can build a mile of roadway for $1 million. The roadway they were talking about was an arterial roadway. 5 lanes, sidewalks, landscaping, the whole thing. Now for $1 million, we can do a lane or two of that 1 mile roadway that doesn't include the sidewalks, the curbs, the landscaping, anything. That's just the pavement. So that's the kind of cost escalations we're dealing with in regards to pavement maintenance. So what are the maintenance strategies we look at for pavement? So these are generally in increasing order. So crack seal's the cheapest. It also has the shortest life associated with it. You go all the way down to a reconstruction. This is going to be the most expensive strategy, but it will also last the longest. A pavement reconstruction, you'll still need to do crack sealing and that sort of thing, but a full pavement reconstruction should last you at least about 20 years, 30 if you take really good care of it and get some favorable weather. But as you see on the chart there, spending $1 on pavement maintenance when it's still in the good category eliminates spending $6 to $10 on rehabilitation. And I would note that this graph has been around for a number of years, so it's probably a little bit old. It's probably like 1 to 10 now. So this also explains why we sometimes don't do the worst roads first. We get that question a lot. Why are you doing this road over here? It's still in decent shape. You should do this one over here that's far worse. This is why. It's a balancing act. We want to not only address those poor roads, but we also want to keep the good roads from becoming poor roads. So we've got to balance that. I will note, too, that strategies are always subject to change based on changes in technology. That's a good thing that's happening right now, is new technologies are coming out all the time that help us to do pavement maintenance better. So we have new products on the market that can help us stretch those dollars a little more. I would note that cost doesn't, that hasn't been favorable over time. But those new strategies, we always take a look at that new stuff coming out. Is there a newer product that we can use that's better than the one we've used for the last 10 years? And we make shifts on those kind of things all the time. So this is actually a chart that came out of the last pavement condition study we did. It was from 5 years ago, but the thing I wanted to note about this is this actually very accurately predicted where we would be at today, at least in terms of the pavement condition index. It predicted that based on Sierra Vista's budget, we would be at a PCI of 58. We are at a PCI of 58. It did overestimate the backlog. It estimated we would be at about 20%. We are only at about 14%. So we've been better than expected, meaning we've been able to pull up some of those poor roadways and keep them from slipping further. So grants certainly can help improve this outlook. We only have a limited amount to spend. That's always going to be the case. We're always going to be limited by budget. So how do we change that outlook? And we aggressively pursue grants. And we've been doing that. Some of them, like the RAISE grants, haven't panned out for us, but the congressional appropriations have, and we are very thankful for that. And that ability to address BST, the primary road to Fort Huachuca, before it starts falling off rapidly, because as I noted, it's at that 20-year mark. And then new technologies also. We continue to look at those all the time. How can we do better? How can we stretch those dollars further? So stretching taxpayer dollars, straight into that. So one thing we do is we cluster work in neighborhoods. With less distance to move the equipment, we get more favorable pricing. So we started that strategy a couple years ago. It also maintains a cohesive look in the subdivision. Before we did that, we'd do a road here, a road over here. People would see the road getting done and they'd get really excited. And then the maintenance vehicles would move out and the calls would come in and be like, I was so excited, I thought you guys were coming, but you just did my neighbor's road, and why didn't you do my road? Where's my road on the list? So now we go by subdivisions. Maintain that cohesive look of the subdivision while also helping to reduce costs. We use economies of scale, meaning we try to cluster like work. So in 1 year, we'll do all like slurry seals roadways. So these are not going to be your poor level roadways. Throwing down a slurry seal, that's like the sandy material, makes the pavement look really black. Just throwing that down on a roadway that is in the poor category, that's going to do nothing, and it's going to not last. It's going to come right back up. So we don't use that strategy there, but we try to cluster these slurry seals all together in 1 year, because the more of them we have, the higher volume, the more the price drops. We'll do reconstructions in another year. One thing about that, however, is when you do reconstructions, there's the perception you're not getting a lot of bang for your buck. I talked about the $1 million per mile. Unfortunately, reconstructions can be a real letdown when you see how much you're able to get done on that type of project. Certainly great news for the people who live along that road or use that road, but the perception elsewhere in the community, they're looking at it going, that's it? So that's why we've got to strike that balance. As I mentioned, new technologies, always looking for those. Watch for the tipping point. That's the backlog control. And trying to get to roads before they're too far gone, if possible. After it slips into that poor category, you're not doing a chip seal, you're not doing a slurry seal, you're not doing a crack seal. You are in a reconstruction mode at that point in time. So ideally, avoiding getting there in the first place if we can. I would note it would be great if we could repave every roadway in the city on a regular basis. And that's actually a question we get on a fair amount. Had that one come in reasonably recently, that the question was, when is the city going to stop doing these little repairs and just repave the road? We would love to be able to do that. However, cost-wise, we have about 700 lane miles of roadway in our inventory. And it's about $1 million per lane mile or two. So you're talking about $350, $500 million to repave all the roadways in Sierra Vista. That simply doesn't work with the budget. And it's not going to work with grants either. So it's not a strategy that we can do, unfortunately. We try to extend the life of roadways as much as we can, and then address the ones that have slipped into poor and very poor with the reconstruction. So some strategies for the future. In the very short term, I want to update the city's GIS system. This is going to help visualize trends. Community development helped us out a lot on the last PCI survey. Blake was great. He took all that data, and it is thousands and thousands of lines of data because each roadway is broken into segments. So all the different roads broken into short segments. And he took all of that and was able to get it in GIS and color code it. So we could see, red bad, green good, and see the impact that our pavement maintenance practices and policies were having. So in the short term, I want to get our 2024 results in there so we can compare them. That's going to be a very interesting look when we're able to get that. As I noted, technology is improving. Cost, unfortunately, is not, but we have seen a leveling in that. It was going sharply up for a while. We're now seeing a leveling in pavement maintenance, so that's good news. We've established some consistency. The last few projects we have done have come in very close to what we estimated they would come in at, so that's very good news. One thing we're doing is reconsidering our pavement cross-sections. This is both the thickness of the pavement and the width of it. There are a lot of roads out there that were built very wide in the 1970s and 1980s. They were built for future development. They were built for car-centric driving trends or passenger trends, and they are not being fully utilized. It's the reason we did a road diet on Fry Boulevard a number of years ago. Ideally, we would do that on other roads as well, but it's expensive to go back and do a road diet and pull in those curbs. However, we can look at the future, and we can avoid overbuilding roads in the future. So we have narrowed them down over the last couple years. Bottom line is that pavement, it doesn't just cost a lot to put it down initially with brand new development. It costs much more than that to maintain in perpetuity. So let's not put down pavement we don't need. Also, I talked a little bit about the change in vehicle traffic over the years, more large vehicles now. As long as I've been here, our pavement sections have been 2/6 for local roads, 3/10 for collectors and above. That's asphalt over base course. Do we need to look at changing that at this point in time? Knowing that vehicles are getting heavier, knowing that that trend is likely to continue, do we need to look at changing our pavement sections that have been the way they are now for probably 40+ years? Going to cost a little more on the front end, but if it performs better over time, then that's, I think, something we need to consider as well. Would like to continue updating the pavement condition survey every couple years. It does provide very valuable data to us. It informs our annual street maintenance. It identifies roads that may be, again, going with the eyeball test, driving down the road going, yeah, this one looks pretty decent. And the pavement condition results say something else. So it helps us in that way. I would say to also continue to aggressively pursue grants for larger roadways. We've been successful in that. Not all the time, but we've been successful in some. It's obviously worth our time and effort to continue that. Collectors are always going to be the biggest challenge because they're more expensive than the local roads. We get less bang for our buck, but they are not going to compete well for those grants. Part of the reason we've been successful in BST is it's the primary corridor to Fort Huachuca. It's got those high traffic volumes that speak to people. The collector roadways just don't have that. So we're going to need to continue to look at options for collector roadways, but they're always going to be, to me, the biggest challenge of our system. And that is it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. This is one of the first things you presented for when William and I were elected, and we were elected in 2018, but I think February 2019 is the first time I saw this chart, and I was like, I know that fat graph, and it has not. And I remember that's when we made the decision, and then I showed it to Greg when you got elected a few years ago, and we made the decision to put more money into the street maintenance, thinking that would help. but it didn't because then the cost went up so much that it just evened out kind of. So just memory lane right now. But I think on strategies for the future, we need to we also need to note that, and our TAC already does this when we go up to the state legislature, we're plead and beg with them, like, hey, because they always get really close to doing something about either addressing the gas tax or make up for the deficit right now. And then it goes nowhere and it just crashes and burns. But all of us up here on the dais, we have opportunities to speak with our elected officials. So when we can, we need to lobby and ask them to finally fix that. And so that needs to be on that page. Other than that, I know we could dedicate more funding, but then that's also competing with other projects that we need to fund. So I don't know, it feels like such a losing battle. And I know you laughed at me when you were like, a few years ago when you were like, oh, it's our greatest asset. And I'm like, it's our greatest liability because it's just constantly throwing money. Every lifespan of the road, it needs more and more money. But I get that it does bring us all the economic benefits, so it's an asset. But yeah, just now I'm just rambling. Sorry, I'm just so frustrated with this.
No problem, sir.
Thank you. So just for estimate, are we using RS means or what are we using for our estimates?
For our estimates, we use historical.
Okay.
So as bids come in, we update because Sierra Vista, I discovered this pretty early on in my career. ADOT puts out their bid results. Those are not going to be reflective of the prices we receive. Our rural location is part of it,
yes, ma'am.
and the economies of scale is the other part. So if we can get bid results from other projects locally, either us or Cochise County, that's going to be the most indicative.
And then because I know we have limited, and that's the other thing that deals with the prices, limited people that can do the work. Do we reach out Tucson, Phoenix area for people or?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Benning, we absolutely do, and especially on the bigger projects. For smaller projects, the locals are usually going to win because all their people are here, so they can offer better pricing. But for the bigger projects, Kenny will talk to anyone she can, anyone who will take her phone call about our project. She sends them far and wide to try to get additional interest. That's the projects they're interested in.
That's all I had. Just curious about how we do our estimates. So.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Obviously, great information. We get asked about roads on a daily basis, especially ones that aren't ours.
Yes.
So I thank you, for one, for bringing us out of the dark ages and doing that whole drive-by and looking at the roads thing. Like, that's kind of crazy for a city like this. But I'm glad we finally are using things like radar, because radar's come a long way. Radar, LiDAR, things like that are very, very important to looking at roads. And the pavement index kind of made me kind of sad. Our numbers are pretty bad. I mean, it's relatively speaking. I didn't catch I know BST, we're luckily I get some appropriation money for BST. And when we got the briefing last week, I don't remember seeing the rating there for BST right now.
So BST, I would have to get the numbers off the 1,000-line item spreadsheet. It varies based on segment.
Right.
The worst PCIs are generally to the north, approaching the gate. That makes sense. That's where most of the traffic is. They are higher further down the road. But again, we're looking for that tipping point. BST is going to hit that tipping point far faster than another road with lower traffic volume, less truck traffic. We don't want to see BST look like some other roads in town. We're trying to get it before then.
Thanks. I appreciate you updating us on the formerly known as the mile, $1 million a mile, which is, I mean, you could look at just a small segment that's going to happen from BST to ALA. That's $2 million with estimated, so that's not even close to a mile. So that says a lot right there. When people think like, why can't we just put $40,000 to a road that would do absolutely nothing? Unfortunately. So thanks for keeping us updated on that math that we have to do in our heads. Another misconception too is the gas tax keeps going up. The taxes keep going up. She made a point there that hasn't changed since 1994. So that is false as well when you hear that out and about. So I know we get approached with that all the time. You guys keep running, like we're raising the gas tax, you know, and we don't do that. And if we did, we still wouldn't get anything from it because of the say it's based off population. We're not growing, other towns are, so that math does never in our favor. So thank you for that, and definitely our you know, just look at my street. We have I had 3 UPS trucks the other day down the street from me at the same house. It was crazy, but that's just the world we live in now, you know. So definitely affecting those roads with those big trucks and things like that. So thanks for bringing that point up. Obviously, and obviously, you know, you said you're looking at technology, things like that. I know other states are doing synthetic asphalt. Now that's obviously very expensive, but what have you looked into on that? If anything, on the lifespan of that versus how much it costs for something like synthetically? Like I know some roads in Texas are doing that. Obviously, they don't have the heat that Arizona has, so that plays a big factor. But have you seen anything on that?
So I've seen a bunch of different stuff out there. This is one of those things where I'm not inclined to be on the leading edge as much due to the risk associated with it. So I'm interested to see how those results come back. And there is a variety of recycling technologies out there as well. There's some that use plastic in the roadways and tires in the roadways, you know, like ground up tires. So far, you know, nothing is beating the conventional asphalt, either in terms of price or performance. But we're keeping an eye on that type of stuff that's coming out. Something's going to come that's going to beat it. Another question we do get sometimes is, you know, asphalt is more prone to things like cracking and potholes. Why don't we use concrete? That's many, many times the cost of asphalt. Good news is it lasts practically forever, but paving a road with concrete is expensive. It's also very noisy, as Phoenix found out when they concreted their freeways, and immediately started getting complaints from people about how noisy it is, and so they've gone in and added asphalt over the top. Yeah, they built walls, noise walls. They've also added asphalt layers over the top. So there's positives and negatives to everything, but it is something we are keeping our eye on.
Okay. And the last thing is just keep in mind is just, you know, as our West End project grows little by little, you know, I see big trucks coming through there that had no business on the West End. They're going all the way to the other side of town. So I don't know if it's an ordinance we can look at in the future to say those trucks should probably take a different route.
Take 90
you know, we have the bypass. We have another way to get to the other side of town. You know, if they're just basing it off their Google Maps, telling them to go that way. Obviously, other cities and towns do ordinances where, you know, trucks have to go certain ways, and to avoid those smaller, narrower roads, to not tear them up as much. So maybe as that project grows, it's something to look into. That's all I have.
I did want to note an example I just thought of a newer technology that we did use, and it had mixed results. So when we paved Charleston, expanded Charleston and paved that 8 to 10 years ago, it had a thin layer of asphalt rubber over the top. So again, it's green, you're recycling tires, but one of the things we found is it was too thin. It didn't bond well to the pavement underneath it, and that's why we saw that layer start to come up on Charleston, and so we had to go back and address that. But that's what it was an asphalt rubber layer. We were cognizant of the fact that we were expanding the road. It was getting closer to homes. Asphalt rubber is very good in that it absorbs sound better than conventional asphalt. It has been used by ADOT and other municipalities, so we were looking at that, but the layer was just a little bit too thin.
And I just had, what you said, be considering the pavement cross sections, and you said that's in terms of the thickness and width, and we just changed the width for new
Yes.
streets going forward. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be more narrow, but when you say thickness, are you talking about like making it smaller or putting more on? Like, what are you
talking about? Putting more on. So currently for a local road, our standard is 2 inches of asphalt over 6 inches of base, and it has been that way for many, many years. The bigger roads, it's 3 over 10 or sometimes 4 over 10. It just kind of depends on the road. So we would talk about making that a little bit thicker, so higher initial construction costs, but should fare better with heavier vehicle traffic that we're seeing today.
And you're thinking we'll try that going forward, or we already started?
It is something we are taking a look at.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Oh, Chuck, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You know, this is good data to work off of. The bottom line, though, in the report is in order to maintain even where we're at right now, we're historically putting about $1.5 million per year, augmented somewhat with some capital improvements funds and grants to do the current street maintenance effort. But the report indicates, what, $3.5 million or so a year would be needed. So we're $2 million short annually just to stay where we're at. And we've recognized for a long time that HERF is not, which was traditionally what we've used to fund street maintenance, for a long time now that has not met our needs. And we've had to rely more and more on sales tax dollars in the capital improvements fund to augment our street maintenance. So we're taking it upon ourselves to try and address something. You know, I'm not going to rely on the state to raise the gas tax or anything like that, because I just don't see anything like that happening. And it's probably not the most appropriate funding source going forward as well, with the advent of EVs and that kind of thing. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in a situation where we can prioritize the use or set aside capital improvement funds for street maintenance. But as Mayor Pro Tem Humphrey mentioned, those funds are competing with other projects like your parks master plan. You know, I don't want to pick on any particular building projects, but you have a number of them in your strategic plan that are all reliant also on capital improvements funds. So without seeing a lot of growth in sales tax, it makes some tough decisions in terms of prioritizing those various projects. You have another strategic plan coming up here next spring, and certainly I think this discussion, needs to take place at that time with regards to, what priority are we going to place on street maintenance versus the other projects that we'd all like to see get done, but may require a little bit more creativity or grant funding to accomplish.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, ma'am. Very informative.
Thank you.
Good job. I think that was it for presentations. And I think we have reports on recent trips, meetings, and future meetings. I think we had the
League of Arizona Cities and Towns. Great. It was a great overall conference, but obviously more important to me was that our youth was there again, and they got to see what the other youth in Arizona, get with those local commissions, councils, see the different names of them. It was good to talk to all those other cities and towns that started off as a commission, have now divested them, and changed from a commission to a council and something different, to where it's easier for those kids to be involved and do more. So it's good talking with them and seeing that, and those interact and watching. Everybody just loved our youth display. They kept talking about all the time about the hummingbird. We didn't know you guys were hummingbird. The hummingbird thing it was a vibe the whole time. It really was good. People wanted our little stickers of hummingbirds because we're the hummingbird capital of the world. And so it was good that they were able to spread that word and be our little, what am I trying to say? Our ambassador. What's that? Ambassadors. Yeah, it was great. It was great to do that, to see that happen, and see our fellow cities and towns, and obviously what they're dealing with and learning from them. And then speaking of the youth, we had our youth commission meeting this past Sunday. Our virtual meeting was really good. It went very well. I love their ideas as always. They have some amazing ideas they want to do. Always want to thank the park staff and Laura for always making sure that it happens. Take care of those meetings, behind the scenes stuff, that we can get some of their ideas done that they want to come out and do, and just want to keep collaborating with other youth groups out there in our city, in our community, that are doing similar things, and maybe work together on a bigger youth symposium, youth summit, to get them all together and doing stuff.
Also want to thank Laura, Elizabeth, and Ben for coming down and displaying the booth. for-
Yes.
Yeah, the 3D,
3D.
that went off very, very well. Heard a lot of comments about that, so thank you. Thank you so much. Any other recent trips? Yes, ma'am.
A meeting, so the Transportation Commission met on the 4th. Just kind of some updates and a good discussion. There will be, well, on the agenda this week, there's a new commission member that'll be joining the commission, so that's great news. The next meeting will be October the 2nd. It's always the first Wednesday of the month, and it'll be at the Transit Center. So if anybody would like to come, it'll be at 3:30. It'll be a really good time.
Excellent. Yes, ma'am.
Yep. Tomorrow, at 4:30 will be the Arts and Humanity Culture Diversity Commission, and the Tourism Commission on the 23rd has been canceled, and everybody needs to look up for the next date for that. They haven't quite settled that yet.
Sports.
Yeah.
Sports.
Parks and Rec meeting tonight. Marta, Councilmember Messmer's going to be there for me in my stead because I cannot make it. But they're going to take on a couple new things that we're looking into. So look forward to getting the results. And thank you for covering down.
And,
Oh, at 5:30, Oscar Urn.
and discussion items and council requests, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor McCaw. I've got 2 things I'm tracking for October. Staff are going to give you another update on Golf Center operations and the status of things. And then you've got your 1-year strategic plan update coming as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. We will see you on Thursday. It is adjourned.